Have you ever had the challenge of communicating with people about your open relationships and you're not knowing exactly how to communicate with them? And from your experience, when you communicate with other people about open relationships, a lot of people don't get it. Number one. And number two is if they do get it, they find it really interesting and fascinating and something they would consider trying. They don't know how to communicate it with other people. And so they have that challenge. And so if you're having that challenge, pay attention to this video. I'm going to share with you how I do it, how I communicate with anybody about open relationships, and some resources that you might want to get so that you can enlighten yourself and be able to communicate it better. I like to say that without communication skills, you can't have good relationships. So if you're going to better your communication anyway, this is one of the fundamental aspects of your communication which you have to tackle, which is what? Which is your ability to manage expectations. You see, if you're going to introduce yourself to someone and you want to be in an open relationship, you want to talk about that at the outset. You want to talk about that right at the beginning of the relationship, right at the beginning of getting to know somebody. Because if you introduce it to them and they weren't expecting it at all, or worse, they're really not into it and they have an aversion to it, you've just wasted your time, and more importantly, you wasted their time because you didn't know how to manage expectations. And so what I want to help you do is manage expectations in the realm of introducing and talking about open relationships. So that's my promise to you. Here's what I want to do in this video. I want to show you how I do it, how I communicate it. I'm going to show it to you in a step-by-step manner so that you can think, step one, I talk about this, step two, talk about this. But in reality, I don't want you to talk like me. I never want you to talk like me. I never want you to talk about like anyone else. I want you to use your own words. And that could be hard for you. You might think, oh, I don't have my own words yet. I don't know what to talk about. I don't know how to talk about it. So I want you to listen to me and listen to the concepts that I'm going to talk about. And I want you to interpret it in your own voice and in your own words. And the more you talk about it, and that's a key. There's a saying, repetition is the mother of all learning. And my take is technique and skill is the father of all skills. Technique and skills is the father of all skills, while repetition is the mother of all learning. Or the technique and skills is the father of all learning. Repetition is the mother of all learning. So repetition, keep talking about it. The more you talk about it, the more you talk about the ideas. In the beginning, you won't know what you're saying. I mean, in the beginning, you're going to stumble upon your words and you're going to struggle to find it. But the more you do it, perhaps you could even just try talking to your cat or talking to your dog about it, and you'll find your words. Okay, so let's go into it. By the way, I don't know who's watching this, so if it's the first time you're seeing me, my name is Rone John. I am the author of Relationships 101, and I run the online course Great Relationships University, and I've been consulting men and women for well over 10 years, 13 plus years. And so let me now go over how I do it, how I communicate it. So let me first preface this with answering. It's actually, I got this question it's a great question from a couple of days ago. And here's the number one thing I want you to think about. There's a couple of things. Number one is that anyone who you talk about this with will get it right away. They will get it. They will recognize it. Most people get it. The way that I talk about it. Now, the way other people talk about it, I can't vouch for them. The way I talk about it, because I talk about it very simply, I talk about axioms. And I'll explain that a little bit in a few seconds, but I talk about axioms, I talk about irrefutable truths. And when you talk about irrefutable truths, they have an epiphany, they say, wow, that's true. And then they can't contend it. And I'll show you some non-contention, some things that people really can't contend about. There are things about truth that you say, wow, I can't argue against that. Yeah, that's what incontrovertible is. That's what non-contentional reasoning is. And I'm going to show you some of that, how I explain open relationships, how I explain it to other people. So the things I talk about when it comes to men and women, especially, women get it right away. Your aunts, your mother, your peers, your siblings, your nieces, they get it. Women get it because it's true. Except most people, they grew up in a society where you're taught not to question, you're taught not to have critical thinking. Because people, especially people who sell stuff, they sell stuff more, they sell more stuff, and they sell better when they say, don't be a critical thinker. When they don't tell you to be a critical thinker, don't be critical of what I'm saying, just buy into what I'm saying. Do you get it? So, people aren't taught critical thinking. They're just taught, buy my stuff, buy my ideas. Practice it in this way. Don't ask questions. Here's what I encourage you. Question everything. And here's what I can say. Anything you know that you don't know why you know that thing, they just tell you, this is how it's supposed to be. Do it that way. And you never question, why do we do it that way? Why can't I do it this way? Anything which you don't know why you do that thing, or why you know that thing, anything you know why you do, and you don't know why you know that thing, is suspect. In other words, question it. Ask questions. Why should I do it that way? Why can't I do it a different way? So anybody who you talk about open relationships with, I'm looking down because I'm looking down at my notes, and I'm looking at the book that I'm going to introduce to you. It's a resource that you can use. So anybody you introduce this to, you tell truths about, they recognize it right away, and they say, wow, that's true. And it's incontrovertible. It's not, you can't argue against it. It's just truth. You can't argue, when I jump, I will land. Because gravity is a naturally occurring thing. You can't argue against gravity. So that's number one. Number two. So the people that you do introduce this to, the people you do talk about open relationships with, while they get the ideas, they're like, wow, that's fascinating, that's amazing, that's actually true, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know how I'm going to go about explaining it to my partner, or I don't know how I'm going to go about explaining it to other people, so I'm just going to go by convention. It's easier to go with the crowd, go with what I'm taught, and go with what other people know, rather than ruffle some feathers and having to explain myself all the time. And I have this dilemma too. I don't want to have to explain to anybody I meet, sit with them for 3 hours and explain the fundamentals of why open relationships is such an amazing thing, which is why I wrote the book. I wrote this book called it's called Relationships 101, The Forbidden Secrets of Love, Sex, Happiness, and the Male-Female Dynamic Explained. Now, I introduced that book to you, and here's why. It's because, number one thing, before I go over the step-by-step thing that I communicate with people whom I meet, who I want to take to bed or want to begin an open relationship with, the first thing you have to do, step number one, is that you have to know what the fuck you're saying. You have to. You have to know what you're talking about. If you don't know what you're talking about, it's going to come off really easily. You're not going to develop the confidence in the other people. You're not going to develop the confidence from the other person. Okay, I still got battery on. You're not going to develop the confidence in the other person to buy into your ideas. You want them to buy into your ideas. And the number one thing to do that is to believe what you're actually saying. If you don't know what you're saying, how can you believe in what you're saying? Does that make sense? And so you have to know what you're talking about. So this is the reason why I designed the book in that way. I designed it a very, very short book. You could easily read it in 1 hour. It's 60 pages. Why did I write it so short? It's because I wanted it to be simple. I wanted it to be transferable to anybody who can explain it to other people easily. The misconceptions, the presumptions, why we have presumptions, examples of presumptions, why men and women behave in the way that they do, why do they think the way that they do, why are they aroused in different ways, examples, my open relationship model, examples. Very simple, very explainable, and that's the best part. You can explain it to other people. So, number one, you have to know exactly what you're talking about. Otherwise, you're not going to transfer the confidence. Sales is just a transfer of confidence. I'm not saying you're going to be selling other people on your ideas. I'm just saying that in order for them to buy into you as a person that you are, you have to transfer your confidence. If you don't have your confidence, your certainty about the ideas, you can't transfer certainty to other people. They can't be more certain than you are about yourself. If you're confused about yourself, you're confused about your ideas, they're going to be confused about you. They're going to be confused about your ideas. But if you're certain about your ideas, if you believe in what you believe in, that's 100% of the game. That's 99% of the game. 1% is just explaining it. If you believe in you, if you believe in your ideas, they will believe in you. They'll believe in your ideas. They'll buy into your ideas if it makes sense. Okay? So, step number 2, how do I explain it to other people? Number 2, presumption. I presume at the outset that I'm not there to convince anyone. You cannot be there to convince anyone. You're there, you'll happily explain. You'd happily filter out people and filter in people. Find people which you align. I like to say that I like to live the biggest life that I can. I like to enjoy my life and then, as a result, attract people to me who align with me. That's completely different than going out there and try to attract people. That's completely different than going out there and try to attract a man or attract a woman. No! I live a life which I enjoy, and as a result, I attract people that align with me. Very simple, very enjoyable, very easy. Anything you deserve, you'll get an abundance of. Savvy? So I never go out there to convince anyone. I explain what I'm looking for. Here's what I'm looking for in very simple terms. Are you in? Very simple. So with that in mind, number 1 and number 2, here's now how I go about it. So I looked at that question and I said, well, I could do a video of how I go about it with other people. And as you're watching how I'm explaining it, I want you to pay attention to it. I want you to grasp the ideas and the concepts. But I want you to say it in your own words. If you say it in my words, you're going to appear fake. If you say it in your words and then it just ends up sounding like me, but it's your words, even though you use the same words that I'm using, then it's not fake. But you'll grow into that. You'll have to grow into that. If you're with a partner, for example, who's been with you for long enough, my sweetie's been with me for long enough that she eventually uses the same words that I use explaining things. And that's perfect. Those are her words. She's not memorizing what I'm saying. It just comes off because she's heard those words enough times. Alright, so when I meet somebody, I presume that all I'm doing is I'm looking for people who align with me. I'm not looking to convince people. I'm not looking to fake people out. I'm not looking to con people. I'm not looking to provide anything which I'm not prepared to provide. I'm looking for people who appreciate my ideas, who are game, who want to be in a relationship which I like, which I'm looking for. It works for them, it works for me. Or either it works for me, works for them, perfect. We appreciate each other, and that's a perfect thing. Now, since you're looking for an open relationship, are you going to find people that are put off by that? Of course! You're not here to date everybody. You're here to be with people who align with you. You're going to be living with them for a long time. You're going to be friends with them for a long time. Some of them will be so significant as to become partners with them for a long time. Live-in partners. They'd better align with you. So how I go about it is that I say, if I introduce myself and we have a fun conversation and I find that I'm in conversation with her, or if you're in conversation with him for a long enough time, for more than 5 minutes, then you consider, hey, this person is interesting enough, compelling enough that I have a conversation with them for more than 5 minutes. I'd happily take him to bed or take her to bed. And so what I do at that point is I introduce to them what I'm looking for. I'm very direct. I'm alarmingly direct. And that's what I encourage you to do. Don't play games. The reason why people play games, the reason why men play games, the reason why women play games is because the other person, they recognize that the other person is playing games, and so they must play the game. Ladies, do you know why men play games? Because they play games because they recognize that women are going to play games. But ladies, men play. You have to play games. Men play games because they recognize that you play games. You play games because you recognize they're going to play games. But here's the truth, and I'm not going to visit it right now. But the reason why men and women play games is because men, they have these games that they play, but it's not about getting the woman. It's about themselves. They play by really awful rules, and you're going to have to forgive them about that. Men play by the rule. It's referred to as a Marxist paradox. They said Marxist paradox goes by, I'll never join a club that would have me as a member. That's the same thing as saying that I would never have a friend that would have me as a friend. I would never date anyone that would actually date me for me. So they have to pretend that they're bigger, faster, stronger, smarter than who they actually are. But women recognize this and see how stupid it is. But they have to play the game. Otherwise, you can't connect. And so my job is to encourage people, to enlighten people to, hey, you don't have to play games. Be direct. So I'm completely direct. This is the reason why I'm direct. I don't have time to play games. You don't have time to play games. So I communicate with them within 5 minutes. If I recognize, hey, this is somebody interesting, compelling, that I'd like to take to bed, I communicate with them what I'm looking for in a relationship, and I communicate it in this way. I'd like to introduce to you. So let's say I'm talking to you. Here's my conversation with you. Hey, I really like you. I think you're yummy. I think you're amazing. I think you're really interesting and compelling. And I would love to know more about you. I'd like to take you home or whatever the case is. But I'd first like to introduce to you so you know what you can expect. I have a very particular kind of relationship. I refer to it as an open style of relationship. And it doesn't mean necessarily what you think of an open relationship is. My version of open is fundamentally based on 2 rules. And I would like to talk to you about these 2 rules and see where you stand and see what you think about them. I'd love to know your opinion. Genuinely. But they're fundamentally based on my primary belief, the axiom that I believe. It's axiomatic in that in all of my relationships, love, you ever recognize that every person you ask what their definition of love is, they have a different definition of love. There are as many definitions of love as there are people. In more simpler terms, there are as many everybody has a different definition of love. So my definition of love is my wanting for my beloved's happiness, intrinsic to my own happiness. In other words, the same happiness that I want for myself, I want that for her. It has nothing to do with jealousy or ownership or possessiveness. In fact, I am intolerant of jealousy, ownership, possessiveness. I'm intolerant of those. And so my 2 rules are fundamentally based on that. My rule number 1, I will never be any woman's only male lover. I insist, not only do I encourage you to have other lovers, to have the options of other lovers, I insist upon it. And that ensures that I'm never taken for granted. That ensures that when I'm with you, or when you're with me, if that's ever the case, just as a for example, that it's deserved. That you appreciate me, you want me to be there, you want to be there yourself. Because you have a lot of options. And out of all your options, I recognize that it's with me you want to be with. And my rule number 2 is just a byproduct of rule number 1, that you never experience jealousy or cattiness or sabotaging in my other relationships. Very simple. What do you think about that? Cut. Very simple. Now, those are very powerful. Why? It's because I presume already that I know exactly what I'm looking for. I know exactly what I'm talking about. My axiom is very clear. It's very incontrovertible. It's the truth. That love is your wanting for that person's happiness. It has nothing to do with jealousy or ownership or possessiveness, whichever they think. And then when you communicate to women or men that, hey, I encourage you, not only do I encourage you, but I insist upon you having other lovers. I insist upon it. So that I may never be taken for granted. Will you find some people that are not into it? Of course. perfect. You don't want to be communicating with them. You don't want to start a relationship with them. Will you have a lot of people that will consider it because these ideas are so awesome? Yes. Will you have a lot of people that will recognize it right away? Like, of course, that's perfect. That's fundamentally true. That's amazing. Let's do it. Of course, you will find a lot of those people. Now, I'll end this video with this. There are 3 kinds of people who you communicate with that will appreciate your communication. Number 1 is the people that will get it without explanation. Number 2 is the kind of person who will get it with explanation. And number 3 is the kind of person who will never get it or will get it later on. And that's okay. You have to be okay with some people never getting it. That's fine. And so if you like this video, I would really appreciate it if you could share it with other people that you might find will appreciate the thoughts and ideas here. And if you could do me a favor, click the like or heart button. It would really do me a huge favor because it increases the algorithm, my reach, and it helps other people too by their seeing the video. All right, and if you have any questions, just reach out to me, send me a message. I'm always open to communicating, or leave it in the comments below. I would love that. I appreciate that, appreciate your attention, and I'll talk to you on the next video. Bye-bye.